All right, y'all. And joining me today, so happy to have him on, the creator of the game Basketball GM. We have Jeremy Scheff, aka Dumb Matter. Jeremy, how's it going, man?
It's all good. How about you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I mean, we're in the dog days of the NBA offseason, and for me, like, that's my one kind of orb. So when it's not there, it's not like I have a real fallback option. I've been doing some more reading, trying to work out more, but it's been pretty dry. It's been pretty dry outside of that.
There's a little bit of European basketball going on.
Very true, very true. And I got to step up my game up on that. Unfortunately, I just looked into it yesterday, and there was unfortunate injuries to, of course, Gallinari and others. But so far, like you said, it's going to be training camp is in what? No, the season starts in like 56 days, so training camp's like a month away.
56 days. You got like a countdown on your wall posted or something?
Maybe just a little thing on the side. But I have to say one thing that has been keeping going. Of course, I talk to you about this or on Twitter as much as I can. At Basketball GM, right? And I've had you on here before. We've talked about it, kind of your journey into making the game and some stuff that you've kind of had down the pipeline. Then it's been a minute since then, and so much more has come to the table. But before we even get started with all of that, for the people who rather unfortunately do not know about this game, like, can you explain what it is, a little background on like how you got started, just like the Cliff Notes version, and then however you want to go into that.
Sure. So, Basketball GM is a basketball management simulation game. And so, what that means is that you are running a basketball team. So, you are the person, signing players, setting the lineup, drafting players. You got to deal with the finances, but you don't actually play basketball. So, it's everything about a basketball team except actually playing basketball. So, if you've played like NBA 2K, they have like the My NBA mode where you can do a lot of the things like that. So Basketball GM is kind of like that, except if you just sim all the games. So no actual playing of basketball. And some other cool things about it are that it's free. You can play it in a web browser. It's at basketball-gm.com. And there are no microtransactions or anything like that in it. It's just kind of like unlimited free game.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that was a very concise but really thorough breakdown of that. I gotta say, since I haven't, and it's probably I'm shameless about it. I've probably played this game, I'd say at least once a day for like the past, I want to say 2 years. Like, it's kind of crazy. Like, I'm always at least for a second doing something on this game.
Yeah, and that's something about this type of game, like any type of like strategy game or simulation management type game. You kind of has infinite replayability because every time you play it, it's a different situation. There's different stuff going on, and yeah, I think sports ones in particular, like as long as people are interested in professional basketball or professional other sports, you're gonna want to play a game like that.
Hmm.
You're gonna because you naturally think, what if they had made that trade? What if they had drafted that player? What if they'd signed that player? I could do better. I could do it differently. You want to see what you have.
Absolutely. Funny you said that. All through draft, all through free agency. I'm a Lakers fan, so I've been trying to do a lot of things differently. And I've had literally like several leagues on my setup with like the 2020 Lakers. Okay, where do we go wrong? Even though I have my own theories in 2021.
Yeah, so yeah, you could try the theory of like what if they didn't trade away all of their good role players? Maybe try that.
Exactly, exactly. It's been a lot of fun to do that, and that's what I like about. I mean, that's one of the many things I like about your game. Obviously, in a day and age where, especially with games, there's always. I mean, it seems like microtransactions have kind of become the unfortunate reality of it, and I'm still, standing against the void. Like, it's ridiculous. We paid X, Y, and Z, and like we should be able to get this core experience without being, forced into giving more. And I'm not into the. I'm not as abreast of the larger gaming landscape. So, like, from what I know, I'm like, okay, this is kind of what it is. But to have a game like yours that is, it's easily accessible, but it can also be as deep as you'd like to make it, and it's already free from the jump, and something that you continue to have that way. There's a way to support you, of course, but like it's not shoved down your throat or anything. I really think that's a rarity out here in terms of any type of game.
Yeah, I think it's probably just that like I didn't start this to make like a video game business. I started it like as a hobby project, like because I wanted a game like this to exist. So I thought, maybe I'll try making one and see how it goes. But then if you're coming from that mindset, you're not thinking like, how do I make as much money as possible? How do I, hire a staff of whatever? How do I, get it, you know, just turn it into like a real business? So like that stuff all, can I make money from it? That all kind of came later. And then, the game already existed. It was already free. It already had some people playing it, like even, before there was any idea it could be a business.
Mhm.
So yeah, and I think that background is kind of makes it a little bit unique and probably contributes some to how things are today. Like yeah, like I'm still just pretty much working on this by myself and hopefully can continue doing that because that's the fun part to me.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm glad it's as fun for you as working on and tinkering it as it is for myself. Like waiting with bated breath on updates and like lounging around the Reddit space. And I guess I kind of want to kind of transition into the impact that you said this game kind of going from a hobby, something you wanted to basically making what you wanted to play out there, putting out what you wanted to see, and really seeing it blow up as it has and impacted folks. I've been on Reddit and obviously you see people all the time who are like sharing their stories about the game. And I know for myself, like, it's kind of crazy, but like, or at least it seems crazy to me saying it out loud. But there's been like several, especially in the past like 2 years on a personal note, where I've gone through some like really tough stuff that has been like cool to like get lost in something for a minute and like for a moment, like be at peace. I've gotten through some bumpy rides, just kind of taking a moment to do something crazy or like chuck it. We're gonna. I mean, like I'll funnel any frustration or something I have in a particular situation I've had between death and family stuff like that to like, okay, I'm just gonna take a moment to be by myself and try to give this outlet that actually kind of makes me feel a little bit better. And I know other people that have probably had stories or something similar to that. Like, how's it been seeing something that you started like this kind of become, and it's still growing, but something that means a lot to others in that way?
It's yeah, I don't even know how to process it. I think like I don't even know if I really like I kind of like don't even really think about that, but like I know it because yeah, like what you said, and like some other people have told me things like that. And like some people have told me like kind of like extreme things, or like like I'm feeling depressed, and like there was a time in my life that like playing this video game was kind of like the only thing that like brought me some happiness. And yeah, like I don't even know what to say about something like that because I guess it's just I think the only way I can like think about it is I kind of feel the same way on the other side, like when I've gone through tough times in life, to be able to just like work on the video game as like a distraction, as a this is like a constant in my life,
Mm.
that I can come back to. But yeah, I guess I just feel like whatever positive thing people are able to get from it is like incredible because yeah, like I didn't do anything to like make that happen, like well, that's not part of the plan.
I keep thinking about those memes where it's like, oh my god, you changed my life, and you're like, I'm literally this person. like that's probably how it kind of comes off sometimes, right?
Yeah, sure. And it's also probably true that like most people who play the game, they probably do just see it as this is just a fun game I play sometimes, and like it's not so serious. But
Yeah.
yeah,
No, absolutely, and that's what makes it so like interesting to me. I mean, I've had moments like that, I guess, where you read a book that they'll say change your life, and in a moment you're like, this is an abstract piece of like art or a document, this or that, and like for it to have you, I don't put video game stuff in that same light, but I guess in that same way, any outlet that you kind of have that's able to, in any way, sort of bring you peace, however that entails, or bring you some sense of security. Like you mentioned earlier, reliability, always being there in a time where maybe a person's going through an uneven stretch. Like it's really interesting to me. If I hadn't experienced it myself on a smaller level, I probably would have been like, oh, that's curious. I mean, I probably wouldn't have been able to relate to it, but I would go,
yeah.
interesting. But then having that small note of like, wow, like, no, that really happened for me. It's still odd, like saying it, but it makes sense having in some way kind of live through it, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess probably more and more people are going to feel that way about some video game. Like you said, probably in the past it was more like, if you read a book or something that could have done that. And that, of course, still happens.
Of course.
But yeah, I guess when you think about that, like, people might be reading a book that was written like 100 years ago or like 200 years ago and think, wow, that like changed my life. And you think about
Hmm.
like the author who wrote that would have, no idea what was going to go on 200 years in the future. I wonder if that's going to happen with video games and people are still going to be playing the same video game in like 100 years after people are dead.
That's kind of crazy, but yeah, exactly. Like the work going far past the addition, like not only the addition, like the original idea of the creator, but also just making its own new legacy. Yeah, that's kind of surreal. um, but speaking about not just on the micro level, what basketball GM has been for players, I know it's kind of understood like that it's opened up some opportunities for you, some rather unique kind of out of the box opportunities. I'd like to definitely like hear a story or two if you have like kind of what's been in your circle from since making this game rather.
Yeah, just there's a few different things. One pretty cool thing that happened. This was in the early days of the video game existing.
Okay.
Was that somebody working for the Sixers emailed me and basically asked me to like apply for a job there because they had seen, that I guess probably on like LinkedIn or something, or maybe on like my blog, or that, I some stuff about basketball in my video game, and also that like, I was like working as a data scientist at the time.
Oh wow.
And that was back when like Sam Hinkie was there and they were doing, all the analytics stuff and they were trying to be very forward thinking. Um, and so yeah, so like I talked to them a few times, like I went through like a few rounds of interviews, wound up not getting a job offer from them.
Mm.
But then in retrospect, that was probably for the best because then like shortly after that, they fired Hinkie, and then I think a bunch of other people left, and I don't know if it would have been very fun to be working for the Sixers at that like in the post process era. Now that they have a good better team, it might be more fun. But like internally, I feel like there was probably a lot of like chaos and upheaval, and then all the stuff that happened with the replacement GM after Hinkie as well.
Yep. That was a lot of stories, a lot of drama there with the Colangelo regime. Fun for sure. But wow, I mean that is interesting just to be able to have that kind of opportunity kind of blow up. And I imagine for a second, like, would you have, and it's just from a basketball level, did you like the Sam Hinkie process? Or did you, as someone who, given your background as a basketball fan, as a data scientist, looking at the way that he did this, kind of a sidebar here, but like, would you have considered maybe going to work every day in that type of environment? Of course, not knowing the job, fun?
Probably, yeah, because there's it's not like the goal is to be bad. It's
True.
that was just seen as this is the strategy for being good, but not just being like somewhat good, being really good. And of course I think it makes sense, that it's not just we need to get one draft pick and then we'll be good, or we need to get two draft picks. It's you need a bunch of chances to roll the dice and hopefully get lucky, because nothing is guaranteed. It doesn't matter if you're the number one pick, it's not guaranteed success. But if you have, five or six really top lottery picks, then, it starts to become closer to guaranteed. So, like, yeah, it's a good idea. It, for the most part, worked, even though they kind of ended it a little bit early. Um, but yeah, it would have been fun to be involved with something like that, especially because it was kind of like breaking the rules a little bit of how things were supposed to be done, thinking about things in a new way. That's always fun.
Definitely, definitely. I think as a thought exercise, again, it's interesting because, again, taking it from the real life as a fan, like, wow, we see the Oklahoma City Thunder right now in the midst of a multi-year rebuild. And unfortunate news of the Chet Holmgren injury for the year. Uh, they were already going to be doing that, but now they're doing that without, reaping the rewards of this last draft class. And I'm looking at it like, wow, it's so interesting to see them. Hey, we're at ground zero. We're trying to figure out, how many, blue chip kind of talents we can add to this team. But in my head, it's like you also have a guy in Shea Gilgeous-Alexander who is still young, but has been around for a couple of years and managing that. And I just think it's always interesting, like you said, like the many different ways of roster construction and team building and philosophy and how that kind of comes into play.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess I wonder if they're thinking if this thing drags on too long and we have to keep doing, the Oklahoma City process, are we going to have to start trading away our good players? Even not just Shea, but like even like some of their role players who are developing.
Hmm.
Is that going to fit the timeline of not just Chet Holmgren, but whoever they're going to draft next year? Because it's probably again going to have another top pick.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, and I've seen, I have way too many horror stories of my own, like trying to play through certain things where I'm like, okay, we're gonna do like a 3 year rebuild. I got, good whatever with my boss, and you have a player who's like really talented, like 22, but they're fed up and they're not gonna resign, after their rookie extension, or whatever. And it's different than Shea. He already just re-up, but again, you're managing players. They can always request a trade, like you said. Aligning the timelines is always an interesting concept for sure.
Yeah.
But I actually had another thing I wanted to ask you about. Neil
Mhm.
Payne, a basketball GM player. Tell me more about this.
Yeah, so yeah, that was another funny thing that happened. So yeah, so Neil Payne, I think he's still at 538 right now. He's
Hmm.
a like sports journalist, writes a lot about basketball, but other stuff as well. And like yeah, like I had been reading his stuff for a while. Like he's I think he does good work, but like he kind of like out of the blue sent me a DM on Twitter, and it wasn't like, hey, I played your game and it's nice or something like that. It was like, I think I found a bug in how the assist percentage is calculated, and here's like a spreadsheet showing what the I think the calculation should be versus how the game is calculating it. And then I looked
Wow.
into it, and he was totally right that there was like a typo in the assist percentage formula, and it needed to be fixed. And it was just like, man, like it kind of raised my view of him as a journalist, because I was like, if you notice a little detail like that in this game you're playing, like
Hmm.
what kind of stuff are you going to notice that when you're writing these stories, because that's kind of what it's about. Like some little detail might not seem important, but might wind up being a big story. So it's like, yeah, he was playing basketball GM and just couldn't get past. There's this little detail that's not quite right. I need to investigate. I need to get to the root of the story.
That is so neat. Like that is really funny. Like just a random DM, like, oh yeah, by the way, this, that, and the other, and it's like, wow, like you said, it's just really cool to kind of see that. Wow. I guess going from that, we know that this is kind of a one man type operation with you in terms of features and creating the game and everything. But you've had other people that you've collaborated with who have given ideas or really helped in terms of the progression of the game. I know I'm
Yeah.
familiar with Alex Noob, just having used some of his rosters from the past. But I want to give you a moment. Any other people that you obviously have worked with in the past that have kind of really helped. I've been playing this game for like what I want to say 4 or 5 years, but it's really from when I first started occasionally playing every once in a while. So like where it is now has obviously been a lot of progression there. So definitely curious to hear about that.
Yeah, there's like tons of people who like help me out by like giving feedback and testing things.
Hmm.
Um, but also some people go even further than that, and some of this is because like I actually make the source code to the video game publicly available. It's not
Hmm.
like technically open source, if anyone cares exactly what that means, but you can like look at all the source code. You can run it yourself. You can make changes to it. So sometimes I will get people who will actually say come through and help develop a new feature or make some improvement to the game itself, um, which is really cool when that happens. um, and yeah, a few guys in particular, like you mentioned, Alex Noob. He made an NBA roster for Basketball GM like years ago. I don't even know when it was originally. I would have to look it up, but like a very long time. And he's kept it up to date, constantly throughout that time.
Hmm.
And after he was doing that for a while, I finally asked him like, could I just like take that and put it in the game? Like, are you cool with that?
Hmm.
And he was like, yeah, like he was kind of happy to help, and has kept updating it after that. And that's where the kind of player ratings for the current players in the game come from, is from with this kind of one random person on the internet who started doing it years ago, and now it became an official like part of the game. Um, and a kind of similar thing happened for the historical rosters. So you can play, all throughout the, league history. You can start at any time. And that would pretty much be too hard to do by hand because there's so many players every single season.
Hmm.
Um, so what someone else had done, um, and his like online username is like Nicky Dobe, NicIDOB. You can look him up places, but he just like wrote this blog post saying like, "Hey, I found this video game basketball GM, and I decided to take all the data from NBA history and combine it with basketball GM and automatically generate player ratings for all these historical seasons using some machine learning technique." And just like kind of dumped it out there, and it was really cool, and people started using it some, and then eventually basically kind of the same situation happened. I asked him like, can I like take something based on this and put it into the game? And same deal. That's where the historical rosters came from. They're generated kind of with a similar machine learning method to what he originally came up with, so that it all kind of happens automatically to generate basketball GM ratings that will produce the stats that were actually produced by these real players. Um, and and then he's also helped out with a few other things, like basically like every now and again he'll send me a message about some algorithm he wants to put into the game for something, like and sometimes it doesn't work, um, which is fine, but
Hmm.
sometimes it does work pretty well, like the contracts in the game, how like free agent contracts are determined,
Yeah.
is something that works a lot better now than it used to, and that was pretty much from his idea. He came up with an algorithm to set all the player contracts for free agents, um, and it's basically it's kind of like a dynamic like auction based algorithms, and the end result is that they kind of dynamically adjust based, if it's a strong free agent class, then people kind of have to ask for less money because there's so many available options out there for teams.
Hmm.
But then you can, if it's a weak class, then you can get away with asking for more because teams just don't have a lot of options of who to sign. And then same thing for how much money teams have available. Like if nobody has a lot of cap space, then maybe you can't ask for a max contract. If nobody has max cap space, or if tons of people have max cap space, then you can get away with asking for more. Um, and it really makes the game feel a lot more realistic because the contracts feel more realistic. And yeah, that kind of came from him, and that's really cool.
That is really cool. I love the fact that you have a more of a collaborative approach and are able to kind of get ideas and have people who not only want to help but come with these amazing ideas to only help with the development and further progression of the game. That's really neat. And yeah, I've definitely noticed a contract situation for sure. Um, as a team trying
Yeah,
to get,
and I know that's something people complain about in 2K. If you sim like a few years into the future, people start asking for like unrealistic contracts that like
hmm
no one has money to sign, and then a player never gets signed, and it's
hmm
just kind of feels bad. And yeah, that used to happen sometimes in basketball GM too, but now it almost never happens that someone will ask for a completely nonsensical contract.
Yeah, yeah. Like they're, Anthony Edwards holding out for 50 million a year at age 36, or whatever.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like no one has $50 million available to give him, even if they wanted to.
Exactly, exactly. No, I love the way it's done now. Even when hey, preseason's here, I still haven't been signed. I wanted 2 million for 3 years, but you know what? Okay, I'll take the 1 year min for 1 year, or
Hmm.
just over that, just to be on the team. Like I do like that dynamic reaction kind of based simulation in there, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, but I gotta go kind of from that more to, I mean, you more to I guess funnier stories related to basketball GM, right? I'm sure you've
Yeah.
had funny ones you came on, you come across on Reddit and on Twitter. I've seen a few on Reddit that I thought are hilarious. I have one a while back. I am a huge, and I've told you about it, everyone that like I'm a huge basketball GM fan on mobile, just because I'm always out or at work or whatever, and it's just so easy to like play it, phone pocket, this, that, the other.
Hmm.
Inside a range, I had a date, and I had I'd had one. I changed my clothes and put the phone in my pocket, but I wasn't really thinking about it. Like I just had I call my basketball GM phone. It's literally just like a $40 phone.
Yeah. So,
Oh,
yeah, you got to explain the basketball GM phone situation
okay.
first, so
So
people can understand what's going on.
that is true. My bad. All right. So like I'm a real junkie on this thing, y'all, and I was tired of like trying to manage to play it on my phone as well, and have to like I would be playing it for a good chunk of time and also want to, use my phone as phones are there, right? And I'm already been a portable gamer. I was a big fan of the PSP, PSP Go, like all of those stuff. Like I'm a dedicated like handheld mobile gamer. I'm like, okay, I really don't want to use my phone for all of that. I just am diametrically opposed to trying to game out on the same kind of thing that I have to send emails, phones, all of that to. So I was like, why not? I'll just like buy like a cheap phone and just make it for the express purpose of playing my game.
A dedicated basketball GM machine.
Exactly. Like I don't have to worry about data or anything. Like I'm all good. I can game as long as I want, as many leagues, and I'm gonna definitely get a return on investment on it because I'm gonna play this thing all the time. Like I've been NBA Summer League. This is in my pocket. Like I always have two, and so it leads to some funny interactions when I'm maybe texting somebody, put that phone away, pull out the other phone, and people are like, oh, you're like, busier. I've had everything from, oh, you must be working with, clients and stuff to other things. Like, no, like it's just the phone I play a game on. And it only adds because if someone's to look at the phone, all they're seeing is like numbers. Like you see it, all you're seeing is like
Uh-huh.
numbers and stats and everything. So you're not even, people could be confused and they think I'm doing something a lot more important than I am.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I've loved it. It's been great for me, but it did knock me out one peg where I met this amazing person. We were clicking. I got dressed, went home, changed, and I don't know why I did this. I put my basketball GM machine in my pocket just to have, I guess. I didn't even really mean to consciously bring it with me.
Uh-huh.
But I was texting her on the way, yada yada, met a nice restaurant, and it just kind of got awkward. Like I sat down, we're talking, and I laughed or something, and I already had my phone on the side. We both had our phones on the side of the table just to like give ourselves that communication. And I laughed, moved, all of a sudden, my other phone falls out of my pocket on the floor, right? And so she was like, what, do you have another phone? I was like, oh, and in the moment, I suck at reacting in the moment. Like I paused, I looked guilty as hell. I was like, oh yeah, that's my so I picked it up. I was like, yeah, I have a game I love playing. I play on this phone all the time. Like that's what it's for. And she's
It
like,
sounds like a complete lie.
totally did. And she goes, like when they slow down, she goes, so you're trying to tell me that you have a phone just for playing a game? And I was like, yeah, exactly what I'm trying to say. And she's like, huh. And like I try to show her, like, listen, like, yeah, it has like texting and everything, but I've never used like anything else but the one app. And I showed her, I don't think she was convinced. Like we smoothed over the rest of the evening, and then after that, like it just didn't work out. She's like, yeah, I don't know. I think we're going two different directions. I was like, I thought we were going the same direction, but I guess the phone did it. So that's my funny story.
Yeah, that's honestly better than any funny story I have. I think that's like number one funny basketball GM story
Oh
in
man.
like the history of basketball GM.
I appreciate that. It was the most. I haven't been to that restaurant since. Man, but yeah, that was my funniest one. I definitely understand. It's been cool seeing other like stories on Reddit and stuff as well. But yeah, this happened to me last year. I think I told you I was gonna share it with you, maybe a
Yeah.
little bit after it happened. Because at first, like it was a real life date. I was really excited, so I was kind of down about it. And then I looked back, like, what is the irony of this? Like, what were you thinking, my guy?
Yeah, I remember you had posted something, I think on like Twitter or Reddit about having like an extra phone used for basketball GM and like made a joke like, like somebody's going to see that and think, whatever. And then you were like, actually, that kind of happened.
That's exactly what it was. That was you exactly. It was yeah, it was wild. And like looking back, I'm like, yeah, the optics on that were not super great at all. But like, if people don't understand, like that's my game. That's what I do. But next time in future ones, I've just said leave it at home, bro. Like I even really, it was a subconscious thing. I just just chill out. But yeah, that was one of the funnier ones I had. But I mean, it's funny that like looking at a game like that where I guess it kind of lends itself to that because people mention this at work. Like I mean, I work. I'm not gonna. I don't know when. I have maybe one person who works with me who might listen to this, but we're good. Like I work
Uh-huh.
in a public library system. I'm always on my computer all the time, right? And so in between emails, this or that, got a quick break. Like it's one thing if you're playing like a fully like fleshed out, like I'm on my Switch or something. But if I'm like, and I love the fact that I could just go on, click real quick. All right, I'm not even really playing yet. Like, there's a free agent I want to sign. I'm looking at numbers from last year. I'm looking at his game log. You know what I mean? I'm looking at where he likes to shoot the ball from, and is it going to fit with my team? Like, it's like the perfect kind of work game, too, I just feel like. Because you can just, like, slip in and slip out.
Yeah, and like a lot of as if it's not blocked on your work computer, you could play it on the work computer too. And I know a lot of people do that, or on their school computers.
Yeah,
And yeah, like if I look at like the traffic stats, like how many people are playing, like you can see that like weekly pattern, like fewer people play it on the weekends because there's some people who are just kind of all day at work or school, just playing basketball GM.
that is so fun. That is, and it's so cool that you can see that too. I wanted to actually ask about that, but I'll save it toward the end. Just kind of numbers you've seen and how
Mhm.
far the game is spread. But you dropped a huge new feature on this yesterday. I've already put in a few games of it, and I just want to kind of get you to explain that a little bit, as well as maybe any other maybe new developments you got in the pipeline. Because yeah, you dropped a huge one yesterday.
Yeah, so the background on the feature from yesterday is that so until, yesterday, you could create a league and you could simulate within a league. So, if it's, a 30 team league, then those 30 teams play each other and then each year, they have their new rosters, they play each other. And that was basically it. It was the current teams in your league play each other and that's it. Um, but if you think about it, that's kind of limiting for a video game because a video game you can do it. You can imagine anything. You can imagine any two teams playing each other, and not even current teams. A current team versus a past team, two past teams playing each other, two teams from different leagues playing each other. A real team from real historical team versus like a fictional team that you just made up with random players. And that's pretty much what the new feature is. It lets you play an exhibition game between any two teams from any of the leagues you've created or any historical team from league history. Um, and you can play under whatever rules or settings you want. So like you can say no, you could say a team from the modern era versus a team from the 50s, but they have to play with no 3 point line, or kind of any of the other things you can customize within the game. And it's a cool feature on its own, but it's also kind of exciting because I want to do more stuff like this. I want to do more kind of like weird fictional things, like you could have like a team, the current all-star team versus the all-time greats in the whole league, including
Yeah,
people who are retired or players who are like deceased because they played 100 years ago and you've simmed
hmm
100 years into the future. um,
that's cool.
or maybe you've made 8 different leagues and you want to say I want to make a tournament out of like the 8 best teams in all the best team from each of my leagues. uh, that kind of thing would be really cool. And I want to add more stuff like that. So this is kind of like the first step towards that. But even on its own, I think, hopefully people have a lot of fun. Got a pretty good response from it so far. People seem to be enjoying it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's been literally what I want to say, like about a whole day since it's been done. I already like simmed a few of my own teams that I built in leagues that I thought were like super stacked against like other teams that I thought were super stacked in other leagues I've made, and I realized they maybe weren't. Like it's been kind of fun. I did a I'm still doing it, but a like kind of round robin tournament where like I'll take the finals losers since like 1990 and sim them against 90 versus 91. The winner plays
Mm-hmm.
92, and like we're in like the year 99 of the Phoenix Suns are still in this, which I thought was
Yeah.
interesting. Like it's cool. It's like you said, it opens up more of that quick game kind of exhibition, but opens up the mindset of like, wow, like I could just real quick sim a game, watch it, see something cool, in like a
Yeah.
sandbox type format.
Yeah, and it's also something that you could play with even if like you're not interested in like managing a team or simulating 100 years in the future or actually playing a video game. If you just want to quick sim between two teams from history, you can just go to it and press one button and see a box score and a play-by-play log.
Yeah.
So maybe some people who aren't interested in the video game aspect of it might still have fun playing around with it.
Exactly, absolutely. I agree 100% with that. I was when I first heard the tease, I was like, "Wait, what?" And then when it finally dropped the next day, that was like Christmas. Like every time there's a new release, yeah. I still remember like where I was when it was the first like real integration of rosters in the game, and I was like, this doesn't get better. I was telling my friend about that literally the entire next day. But speaking of that, actually,
Mhm.
so I've met exactly one person who played basketball GM before I told him about it. I've made a few converts since then, just because I'm like, hey, you have to try it, you have to try it. I mean, my friend Josh Earl, like, there's a few that I've like talked into playing at least once since then. But shout out to Justin Matcham. Just a lot of stuff with the cat, a lot of just a lot of NBA kind of development stuff. But he had been playing basketball GM for I think like 10,000 years or whatever on his like sim 10,000 years on his laptop, and it was like slow as like a snail. Like he was trying to show it to me, and it was like dragging out. And that was when I first was, hey, dude, like I play this awesome game, basketball GM. You ever heard of it? It's like, yeah, dude. Like I'm like he was way deeper than even me. And so I have to ask you, like, have you ran into someone who like has played the game or know someone who played the game before I want to say in real life. I mean, obviously it's all real life, but it's one thing
Mhm.
having a community of people that you don't really know personally, but you know through Reddit, Twitter, social media. Another like, oh yeah, Josh from up the street, I know him, he knows me, and we play this game.
Yeah, and yeah, the answer is I actually haven't ever, met someone in real life who already knew about basketball GM before I like
Wow.
told them about it. Like some of that could be because like I kind of feel uncomfortable like talking about it a little. Like I don't want to be like, you know, it's almost like a spam email if I'm out there like telling like every person I meet.
No.
Or like because I'm sure I've like met someone who's played it, or like, I think like all the pickup basketball games I've played over the year, like somebody
Hmm.
played basketball GM, but I'm not like sitting on the side of the court like who's got next, or oh, who's have you ever heard of this game called basketball GM? Or I don't know, I'd feel weird.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
but
funny.
like a couple of times I have heard somebody who like they know somebody who played it, or like they would say like, oh yeah, I mentioned it, and then my other friends said they knew what it was, and yeah, but I guess eventually it'll happen to me,
Oh
but
yeah.
maybe. But it's also that's the cool thing about the internet is you have this really niche type of video game that a lot of people wouldn't like, or I've gotten that response too from people. I like tell them like this is basketball GM and this is how it works, and like what do you think? And like people say like I don't understand how that's a video game, or like I don't understand how that's fun, or like maybe
Wow.
they could use that in like school for like for some kind of like business class or something
Hmm.
to but like I don't see why it would be fun, like why it's not a video game, or it's not like fun.
That's
um
interesting.
but then we have the internet and we can talk to people all around the world, and if 1% of people would be interested in something like this, well 1% of the world's a lot of people, but you're not going to run into them every day.
That is very true. That is very true. And yeah, considering like where you are, and I want to talk about this a little bit now, because you not only had basketball GM running for a while, but you have made countless other kind of games over the years, and I'd say like maybe three major ones now with basketball GM, baseball, football, hockey. And I mean, I think you would consider like an indie kind of game developer, like an indie video game type of group. Like, how would you describe like what you've kind of gone into with these other games as well, and going into the other major sports, and I guess like you said, kind of be comfortable where you are in like a niche kind of game developer.
Yeah, so yeah, like you said, there's now baseball and football and hockey games. So with basketball, that makes all the four like major American sports. And yeah, I know there's a lot of other sports in other countries, most notably soccer. Um, but I'm an American, so whatever. I don't know much about soccer. Um, although it would be cool to make a soccer simulation game. It's just soccer. Soccer's pretty different than the other sports. So the
Mm,
advantage of the like major American sports is that all the leagues are pretty similar.
mm,
Like NHL, NBA, MLB, NFL, like they all have about the same number of teams. Like, they have some kind of like, limits on the salary cap. I guess baseball doesn't, but the other ones do. They have a regular season, then they have like a single playoff tournament, and you crown a champion. You have free agency, you have a draft. They're pretty similar structure. So, in terms of making video games of those for the sports management games, a lot of the code is the same for all the sports I have. So it's pretty much just you have to write something to simulate the different sport, and then there's like one or two things that are unique to that sport. Like in baseball, you have to set like the batting order. There's no batting order in other sports,
Yeah.
so like that's its own thing. And like hockey has like the penalty box. Like there's nothing else like that in the other sports.
Mm.
um but it's really only like a few things per sport that is like, oh, this is like a new concept I have to add to the code base. um but still, just like getting, and that they all share a lot of code, which makes it kind of easy to update. Or like when I release a new feature, I release a new feature in all the games at the same time, which is really nice.
Mm.
um but it was pretty difficult to get it to that point, to especially get the first, like, to split it from just being a basketball game into being basketball and football, and sharing all that code. And every piece of code is generic enough to be able to do the basketball thing or the football thing in the right situation, and
Mm.
finding all the places that need to be changed. It was pretty challenging, but now that it is there working, like, yeah, it's nice to be able to update all of them at the same time. And I just like press a button, update all the video games. um it's fun. But yeah, if but to do like soccer would be harder, because like it's not an American sport. It's an international sport. They have all these different leagues, and it's not one tournament to crown the champion. It's like all these different tournaments,
Hmm.
and it's not really free agency. They like the teams actually like sell players to other teams, and like weird stuff like that doesn't happen here. You can't just go buy a player. Like what is that like?
Yeah. He said,
um
"What is that?"
yeah,
Absolutely.
there'd be a lot of different stuff that would have to be added for soccer, but it'd be cool to do that someday. Or some other sports um, that are popular internationally. But even four is a lot, so
Yeah,
it's cool to have what I have now.
exactly.
Um,
Especially considering the depth that each one kind of provides.
yeah, and that's another cool thing about having the other sports, is that like they're all basically the same game, just applied to a different sport. But just like the nature of the sport makes the games feel pretty different. Like if you compare basketball and football, like in basketball, you have like, you know, 12-man roster, whatever, maybe a couple extra. And, pretty well every single player on the team.
Hmm.
But then football, you have a lot of players. Um, and players are getting injured all the time. And, you're on your third string, safety. And it's just a lot more detail you have to manage. You have to sign a lot more players. You have to worry a lot more about your depth at all these different positions. And yeah, like if your quarterback gets injured, you need a specific backup quarterback. You can't just be, well, we'll slide everybody over one position and my power forward will play center. Um,
Yeah.
so to play football GM, you have to wind up playing a lot slower and a lot more detailed. And some people are kind of into that, and they like that detail, and they like being able to manage that whole huge roster. But other people are like, oh, that's too much. I'd rather play a simpler game. But then hey, you can pick if you want to play basketball or football,
Yeah.
and that's kind of one of the deciding factors, is how much detail do you want.
Yeah. And that's what I love. That's probably my best. Like, I guess if I had to like nail one thing I love about the game is like how deep it can go. Because you're right, like on its onset, you could just fire a basketball GM, 12 players, boom, you know what I mean? But then for me, it's okay. I do want to, like, I always, every year, change my watch list of players I want to add to my team, whether free agency or trade, and like how their numbers are looking. And if they're starting to regress, I don't want them anymore. Why am I watching them? Like, that sort of thing. And,
Yeah,
that level of detail can be enhanced. So, like, I'll go with a team that's all small ball. Because I have a type, and we talked about this last time, like players that are
yeah,
small, score the ball. Okay, fine, we're getting out rebounded crazy. Let's get this like guy who like from the ratings isn't really that good, but at least he can rebound. I can play him for like 10 minutes a night, and then that'll help me somewhat, and I can still play my like four guard lineup or all of
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. And that's kind of one of the things that I'm trying to do with the game, is make it like, I don't want to force you to do stuff. I don't want to force you to have to do micromanagement and force you to look at all the details. But if you want to look at all the details, I want it to be available, and I want it to be either as good or better than what you can do for the NBA. Like, I want I want it, when you're looking up NBA stats and, NBA box scores and all that, I want you to feel bad because I want you to feel like, man, like it's so much better looking at my basketball GM league, and they make it so much easier to look up all these stats, and they show you all these other things that I can't find on, ESPN.com or NBA.com.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of like my ultimate goal is to make it like better than reality in terms of like how you can look at the data and the stats. And so yeah, like I try to put like a bunch of advanced stats in. I try to like, you can like um I don't know, like one cool feature in the game is called the Goat Lab, and you can type your own formula in there. And the
Mm,
formulas, like you can put different stats in, like, points per game or total points in the career, but also, like awards and you could say like number of points scored times number of MVP awards plus number of rebounds times
mm,
number of all-star appearances, whatever crazy formula you want,
mm.
and then show like a ranking of players based on that score that you defined. um
Wow.
and like I'm not sure if there's a place that makes it easy to do that for the any of the real professional sports.
Mm.
Maybe somebody should make that, but stuff like that. Like I don't know. It makes me happy whenever I get any feedback that's like, I like looking at stuff in your game better than I like looking at NBA.com or whatever site people use
Oh
for
yeah.
for NBA stats.
Absolutely. I mean, I love even like you said, the fact that you have I do this all the time when I'm playing on my not on my phone but on my desktop. You already have the ability to keep the real stats from that player, from the jump. So if I start a league right now, let's say I'm looking at Malik Monk, everything he's done up to this point in his career is done. Same with LeBron James, all the awards up to this point, all of that. And so you can actually look at, okay, percentages, this, that, and the other. And now we're going with our sim and seeing how close or how far it relates to what his career has been, regression, all of that. Yeah, I'm a junkie for that. So you have just the vocal, yes, like this is awesome what you have here, and the way that you display the data is really so cool and easily accessible. But like you said, as deep dive, as in depth as you would like to make it. So really cool there. Um, you were talking about getting feedback, and you've every year I actually look forward to this. You kind of show how many people play the game, and each year it seems it's gone up. I can only remember the past 2 years, I want to say, that I've seen like a newsletter or something. Before that, I was definitely a little more casual than I am now in terms of playing it. But like, I
Mhm.
kind of want to get like how far reaching it is. We talked about how kind of niche it is in terms of, not really meeting anyone in person, more online, but at the same time, like this game's pulled some numbers.
Yeah, it keeps growing. It keeps kind of like, and there was never like one point when it was like, went from, 0 users to like thousands of users in one day or something. It's just kind of been gradual over the years increasing. But yeah, it's to the point now where there's probably like in total like tens of thousands of users, like active users, like people who have played it within the past week is probably over like 10,000. um, and uh, yeah, and one of the cool things is that just in the US, and so like I use like Google Analytics on my website to track like how many people are visiting it. It also shows you like what country people come from, and that's one of my like favorite stats is that I've almost got someone who's played basketball GM in every single country of the world. I think there's like a few like very small like island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean or something with like 500 people. Like a few of those haven't had a user yet, but I think it's literally like three countries haven't had a user. Like every other country has had at least somebody you know play it. Um, and yeah, like one, and that includes North Korea. We had one user from
Wow.
North Korea show up in the logs, and he played it for like 20 minutes and then never came back.
Wow.
So we don't know what happened to him.
We don't
Hopefully
know.
he's okay.
Okay, yeah, I'm about to
Um,
say. Wow, that is cool. Yeah, hope she's fine out there for sure. But yes, I mean that is really cool to kind of have that wide of a reach. I mean, like you said, still some small islands here or there that got give the program, but aside from that, really, really neat.
yeah, and one of the things I learned was how popular basketball is in Brazil. Like I know there's been some Brazilian, NBA players.
Hmm.
So like there's some basketball there, but just in my mind, like I just associate Brazil with like soccer. Like I just feel
Yeah.
like everybody just cares about soccer and that's it. But like Brazil is actually, I think, like one of the biggest like non-English speaking countries that plays my game, which is impressive because like the game's only in English, so
Yeah.
like not
Wow.
everybody can play it there because not everybody speaks English.
Yeah.
But there's still like a pretty good number of users from Brazil playing basketball GM, and some of them have told me like, yeah, like we're super into basketball, and that's it's kind of a big deal here.
That is really cool. Like, that is really cool. I gotta ask, kind of in continuing with the expansion of the game, and I saw this. You shared this. I thought it was interesting. 3 words, like a Furry Basketball Association. What's going on with that? Like, let's talk about it.
Yeah, so well, first I have to ask you, like, do you know what a furry is?
I am familiar. Yes, yes. My I am familiar with it.
Yeah, so this was very early in after I had released a basketball GM. I got an email from somebody who was, I think he was in charge of this organization called the Furry Basketball Association.
Okay.
And so the Furry Basketball Association was like a simulated basketball league, um, where like all of the players were furries. They were like, these kind of like, humanoid like animal type things.
Yeah.
And they did like, and they all had like their backstories, and they had like artwork, and like some of them had like Twitter accounts, and they would like tweet at each other in character and stuff like that. um, and I was kind of like, wow, like I had no idea something like this would exist.
Yeah.
um,
No, me neither.
but then what he had come across, the guy who was running it at the time, he'd come across basketball GM, and he was like, oh, maybe I could use this to simulate like the games in the Furry Basketball Association. Um, and so he asked me like, could you like make like a modded version of it that we could do, put in like custom injuries. You could say, like I have like a broken wing or something instead of a sprained ankle,
Yeah.
for a bird-based character,
Okay.
and like a few things like that. And like they actually um, paid me a little bit of money to make like some customizations to help them do their simulations. And one of them was putting in an exhibition game feature, and it was only ever in that like special version I made for them, where
Wow.
they could like, I think what they wanted to do was like simulate a game maybe multiple times so that like it could like fit like a narrative or storyline. So they would want to just like pick, I want to play these two teams and just until I get a good box score, just sim
Hmm.
it a few times.
Yeah.
Um, so I had a feature that was only ever released in the furry version of the game. It was only for like that one person who was simulating the Furry Basketball Association games, um, which I thought was kind of funny. And that like at some point I need to actually put this in the real game, and like it took a really long time to do it. Um, but then I think eventually the guy who was using Basketball GM for that, I think
Hmm.
he stopped doing it. Somebody else took over, and I don't think they use Basketball GM anymore. But I think the Furry Basketball Association does still exist. So if any furries listening to this, you might want to go check them out.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, listen, we got to thank the furries for this feature. No, I'm playing. I'm be waiting for the basketball GM special furry edition. That is like honestly the best story I've heard about this ever. Like that takes the cake. Wow. That is
Really,
really
I
really
don't know.
neat.
I don't think it's better than the two phone story.
Oh. Okay, that was yeah, that was my own pain there, but you're right. I'm gonna put that up there because
Uh,
that's gold.
yeah.
Wow.
Well, another cool thing about the furry people is that the
Hmm.
guy who was doing that, he would like and he stopped doing this at some point, but like for like a few years after that, he would send me like like a holiday like greeting card, like a Christmas card or something, but it
Oh
was like a
wow.
custom like furry basketball like greeting card. Like they would have like one of like some, I guess one of them or maybe multiple of them were like artists, and they would draw like a special card and send it out to the whole group.
Oh, that is
And
dope.
like they made like physical like trading cards with like the player's photo and stats, and like buy, and like I still like you can't buy that stuff. Like that's like
No, no.
these are like this is like unique memorabilia. So like I still have
Yes.
I, I I'm gonna I'll cherish them forever. Like it's really, it's really cool.
Yeah, no, I'm laughing, but like on the real, like that is really neat. Like these experiences, these moments, you're right. Like you can't find that anywhere else barely. Like like
Yeah.
that's crazy, but that's really really cool. And wow, I mean, again, like that was the funny that's my favorite story for sure. We have the phrase to thank for. That's really cool. I'm gonna have to check them out after this. I don't know. But Jeremy, this has been.
Maybe we've awoken something in you. I don't know.
Dude, I mean, listen. If they use it and I can get myself a trading card, I'm a sucker for some memorabilia. I was trying to find real quick. I saw this on Reddit and I totally forgot where this guy had
Mhm.
a shirt with like the San Antonio churro on it,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Yo,
Yeah.
I want that." Like, are we gonna get any merch online, or is that like you have such
Uh,
really cool logos? And yeah, only like three people would understand like me wearing a shirt with that, but like
yeah.
I'm a sucker for that type of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That was, yeah. A guy in Reddit made he made his own San Antonio churros
Oh, he
shirt.
made it. That was
Yeah.
dope.
Like and wore it to a Spurs game and like posted a selfie.
That is dope.
Yeah. I have a I have one for myself. I have like a Montreal Beavers shirt that I wear sometimes. I'm
That's
partial to
cool.
the Beavers logo. I think that's a nice one. But yeah, I'm kind of too lazy to set up like a real like store or like make like real merch or something. But like
Yeah.
I've told people before, like if you want the the graphics and you want to design your own, like there's a bunch of websites where you can design custom T-shirts, just like a one-off thing and make your own. So if you want to make your own, like I can give you the link to the high resolution graphics.
I might have to
Um,
check you on that, yeah. Because I between the Beavers I'm partial to, the Lowriders, the Minneapolis Blizzards. Like for some
yeah,
reason those just
yeah, the Lowriders is a great logo. Yeah, yeah. My
yeah,
shirt's older than my shirt predates when the Lowriders exists.
Lowriders.
Yeah, I think I need to get a new shirt. Yeah, my Beavers shirt is getting pretty beat up these days.
Oh
So
wow.
I need to make another one.
It's had a lot of run. I'd even do them with the basketball GM logo on, like just to have a few. Let's just model this stuff out. Vegas
Yeah,
Summer League is like the who's who of who's that, you know. So next year when I go out there, wear like three or four of those shirts, fit right in
yeah,
with the 2000 um, Seattle SuperSonics jerseys and everything.
yeah. Make it happen. Let's do it.
Absolutely. Will do, man. Hey, Jeremy, this has been a blast. As like it's the first time, really a lot of fun. Thank you for hopping on. Where can people find you? Obviously, your work, any updates that you're going to be having, like all of that. Definitely plug away.
Yeah, sure. So the basketball GM website is basketball-gm.com. And on there, there's links to like social media and everything. There's a big community on Reddit. But also, if you go on Twitter, my Twitter handle is basketball_GM. I post all the updates there, and that's honestly like I don't really use Twitter that much. That's pretty much
Hmm.
all I post there
Yeah.
is when there's an update to the video game.
Hmm.
So if you follow basketball_GM on Twitter, you'll get all the updates, and you'll not get a lot of extra junk.
It's pretty clean. It's pretty clean. It's the facts. It's streamlined. It's hey, new update. This is what we got. Yeah, not you're not gonna see Jeremy go, hey, check out my game. Like this, is how cool it is. It speaks for itself, y'all. So definitely make sure to do that. All right, on Twitter at basketball_GM. Jeremy, thank you again, man. This has been a blast. Listen, y'all know where to find me on Twitter at Corbin NBA. Unfortunately, you will find a lot more random fluff on mine. I wish I could say otherwise, but I can't.
No, always only good stuff. Only good stuff.
Only good stuff. Thank you. I'll give that exactly. So definitely make sure to check that out, y'all. Listen, now tune in that way when I plug Basketball GM in like every third pod I do. So if you didn't know what I was referring to, this was the show. I hope you listen. Hope you pay attention. Because I probably won't stop. But until next time, y'all. For Jerry, for myself, we are Frosty. Y'all stay Frosty. I'll talk to y'all real soon.